let's look at PA1. So in my program I have a bunch of methods just to do the testing, so the main is pretty clean. So we'll run through each one of these here. Come on. All right, there we go. All right, so first thing we did is initialize the manager. You can see here the manager was initialized. I started it with a refill amount of 2 and an initial reserve fill of 5. If you look at the manager, those are the defaults, but we can change that if we wanted to. So the manager is initialized, and here's the data dump of the information in the manager. So we've got 0 active nodes, 5 reserve nodes for a total of 5 empty active list, and a reserve list of 5 nodes with the names of uninitialized and an incrementing value. All right. Now we're going to add 6 nodes to the active list, and what should happen is we'll add the 5 that are here, and then we'll hit an empty reserve list condition. So the reserve list should fill with 2 and then move one of those over to the active. So we should end up with 6 in the active list and 1 in the reserve list. And we can see that is what happened. So my code will, after every test, will say in the demo what the test is doing, and then every time an action is taken, you'll see an action here and then a dump of the manager. So here's our first node moving over to active from reserve. We've got bird here, so there's 1 here, we've got 4 here. And you'll notice from before that came off the top of the reserve list, 300-15890. It was in reserve before this action, and now it is in active with new values for name and value. And this process continues until we get to 5 nodes, and now we have an empty reserve list. Because we asked for a 6th node for active, now the reserve is refilled and one of them is moved from reserve to active. So I have 6 nodes in active, 1 in reserve, and you can see that here. So now let's move 1 from the front of the active and put it back on reserve. So what we should see is dog 100 ID 32001227 should come off of active and become the first node on the reserve. So let's go ahead and try that. All right, moving 1 from existing, and we have 5 nodes now in active and 2 in reserve. We see dog 100 is down here. Just to double check to make sure that was the first one in active before the action was taken, and we can see here it is the first one now in reserve. Now let's move from the active list onto the reserve, but instead of taking from the front of the active, we're going to choose an address. So for this test, I'm choosing this particular address, which happens to be the 4th one on active cat. So cat 45, address 15368010. What we should see happen here is the next for dog should change to point to bird, and bird's previous should change to point to dog. Currently dog points to cat and bird's previous points to cat. All right. Now we see cat used to be here at the 4th position on active. Now it is the 1st position on reserve. And we see bird correctly points to dog, and dog for its next node correctly points to bird. Now let's see what happens if we try to remove from the active list with an address that doesn't exist. For my testing, I'm just putting address ID 123, which is not in the active list, so we should see a failure here. Actually, not a failure, just the debugger should tell us that it doesn't exist. And here we go, not found. We're going to go ahead and print the list again here. You can see it didn't change from the prior time, 4372. Got 4 here, 3 here, 4372, the same 4, same 3. Let's add this cat back onto active. to make sure that that still works. What we should see is the ID will be the same. It'll go to the front of the active list, but I'm having the values change. So the values that I want it to change to is dog and 95. So let's make sure that happens in my test here. And dog 95. From the reserve list, here's the ID. It is now on the active list, and we only have 2 in reserve, and the manager data stats have been updated. Now let's just do a quick find. My find by name, I'm going to look for the first occurrence of rabbit in the active list. And we found rabbit in the active list. Rabbit was at position 3 in the active list here. And we are done. Let's really quick demo that Space Invaders runs. Visual Studio. Okay, real quick. And Space Invaders runs.